place, Bunnings. We are we're here to grab all the stuff for painting the sort of undercoat, rust prevention, all that jazz. So we've got to grab a bunch of different painting stuff. Just picked that up as well, so we can finally get stuck into properly cleaning it, painting it, so we can prep for sand deadening. Not the most ideal weather to be figuring out rust and water and whatnot, but we don't really have much of a choice. We really need to pull everything out of him, and
it's raining.
It's raining again. Oh, this will be the death of me. So just waiting on. Good. Oh, well, I guess we'll have some food and hopefully it passes. All the junk out of Vance. Well, some good stuff. And we're left with the bare bones. Basically have to pull any random bits out. I think I'm also going to be pulling up these guys. So we can then, the floor's already pretty scuffed, but we've got to prep the paint for us to then paint on top of it to prep it for sound deadening. And to make our lives easier, we'll also probably remove the lids just so that we've got access to within them, because I know some moisture sort of gets caught in there.
So much
dirt from 40 years, and under here, under this seal,
gross
dirt and who knows what else. We'll have to clean that up, because that's where water gets in along the bottom along here. While this is aluminium, so it's alright, annoyingly it does lead to rust on the door frame itself, so on the door itself. So I'll give another big clean. Still remove these two side ones as well. A couple little bits and bobs. Dirty.
wow. There's a big hole in our car.
Oh no!
This is quite scary. So why'd you do that, Glennie?
So one of the hardest things about this build has been the water tank situation. I've got limited space. I really wanted to keep that, but it was only about 20 mil off that I couldn't fit something in there. So we're gonna have to go with a Defender based one from Front Runner that sort of goes in the wheel arch. That'll be 36 litres. I cannot tell you how many water tanks I've had to look at to try and get it to work. In a perfect world, I think, and it might be something in the future, so you can get fuel tanks. Our current one is under the main seat, the driver's seat. You can get one and put it under the passenger seat, but I quite like that storage, and I'm going to use that for electrical stuff. And you can also get the larger tank in the back. Now, that would be great together as like a long range setup, or we could buy the rear one, use that as the main fuel tank because it's bigger, and then buy a new water tank for a new fuel tank for under the driver's seat, but then just make that the water tank. But it's just all really expensive. So for now it makes sense. And I tried to find one that could sort of work in the rear part where the rear tank would go, but the rear tank's shaped super odd. It's custom. So I literally couldn't find a generic water tank to go in there. So we're just gonna have to make do with this part here. Pretty well clean. I think we did a pretty good job. Now we've got to, because there's already paint down, most of it's even not like through to full bare metal. No, actually there's a bit here and there. So a lot of stuff the paint doesn't want to bond to painted surfaces as well. So what we're also going to do is just go around, rather than like stripping it all back to bare metal, there's no point. We're just going to rough up the surface. So we've just got some sandpaper, we'll scuff it all up. It'll bond really nicely to the bare metal anyway. So we're just going to scuff the whole area that we're going to paint. and then clean that all off, and then we're going to use this. So we're going with rust bullet. I've watched I don't know how many bloody videos about treating rust, but then because it's aluminium, it also has to be not specifically rust because it's corrosion, blah blah blah. But in all the research I found, I thought this was probably the best way to go about it. That way it's just prepping the surface, and then we've also got it's just 2 coats of one form of paint. It doesn't need a top coat. It prevents rust. It's good on aluminium. It can be put on top of paint if scuffed up. It sort of ticks all the boxes really. For our situation, that was probably the best one for us, and it also means it can be used for stainless steel as well, but also works in aluminium. Often it's one or the other, and there's different preparations. It's a headache. There's so much to look at, but from all the research that I did, I figured that was the best way to go about it. And then tomorrow we're actually going to get the rollers on it and start painting. Second go done. Happy days. Pretty good coverage. This is fine to then also do a top coat of any kind you want. So again, do your own research. It all depends on your own situation and stuff. But for all the applications that I needed it for, this was easily the best one to choose from. I can't remember the name, but I'm going to find it because I found his video is really, really helpful. He just tries so many different things. It's based in the States, but there's either the same products you can get in Australia, or you can get like basically similar versions of each other in terms of like basically, well, just everything. He's got it's something geek. I'll put it somewhere or I'll write it somewhere or whatever. I just got to find it. His videos were incredible. I watched a stupid amount, just the best way to go about different things, different types of metal, rusted, underbody, everything. So much stuff. So yeah, now we're going to pick up stuff from the post office, grab a couple things, and tinker away while this then needs to set. So annoyingly I can't really do anything else in here. I just really don't want to mess with it, don't want anything to come in here and land in the wet paint, and I don't want to sort of flake off any at all. And hopefully by tomorrow we'll be able to actually stick the sound deadening down. So I mean, at least once it's touch dry I'll be able to cut stuff to size, but still just sort of let this chill for a little bit. Pretty legit too. Even a stubby cooler. You beauty. Don't even need to cut them. Straight in. It's like I'm made for it. That makes my life a whole lot easier. A whole lot less cutting, which is nice. In terms of why we went with car builders, just more the ease of application. There's heaps of different ways to sound deaden things, but the fact that you literally just get all perfect sheets, you use a roller, the adhesive's way better. You can still take it off if you need to get under parts. But a lot of the old stuff just ended up gunking everything up, or the adhesives that you use, if you then needed to get under them or move them or whatever, it was just an absolute nightmare to try and clean. But yeah, I was just going to literally source it myself, but the ease, I just couldn't go past how easy it is to use. Hello. Hi.
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 What you doing?
Look, it's the perfect fit.
Oh, you don't have to cut it.
No.
Nice.
How good's that?
Efficient.
Efficient. How good's that? One packet. Almost exactly the right size.
Yeah.
That's so funny. We're also treating this as sort of, not only will it be sound deadening, but also ends up being somewhat of a vapor barrier and a slight heat insulator. Obviously, yeah, it's not full insulating, but it will end up making a difference compared to nothing at all. But I'm actually quite intrigued to see just in general what this does for just the reverberation of the panels, because all the sound back here is going to be more so to do with the rattling of the old Landy itself as opposed to stopping engine noise. So we'll definitely do just with the back done, and then as with all of it done, I'm sure will be a really nice, well, it is a Land Rover. It's not going to be a sedan with all these nice airtight things. It's still going to be pretty loud, but if we can minimize it a little bit so we can somewhat have a conversation, happy days.
Good boy, Lay. Yeah, good boy. Yeah.
The sun is out. Can you believe it?
We have one day of sunshine, and it's gonna be pouring rain tomorrow. So
like the worst we've had.
yeah.
So it's been really tough because a lot of this initial stuff is paint based, rust prevention based, and also constantly going back and forth from outside to Nigel there and into the shed. So it's been slow, but today I'll explain once we get in there, but essentially we're just going to be painting white around the windows. It'll be the only part that's really exposed once everything else is in there. So we just want to make it white because the yellow does stick out. I'll explain when we get in there. This is sort of the area that I'm talking about here, there, and obviously this side as well. Essentially the countertop is going to sort of go, excuse the dirty nails, countertop is going to go basically to the very bottom of the windows, almost like snug up against that little lip there, if not the tiniest bit above. So that blocks like that whole bottom area. Then we're going to have overhead cabinetry along the top here to where it almost goes, it leaves a thin strip above it that's going to be yellow there. And then obviously everything else is going to be, that we're going with like a raw ply finish that's then just going to be lightly whitewashed. So it's still very much, everything's going to be somewhat clean. I know some of you are probably saying, don't do it, but we lived in vans with white cabinets for 3 years, and yes, it gets a bit dirty, but nothing a magic eraser and a bit of extra paint can't fix. The whole thing was either, we build out the wall, or, which just sort of seems, it just seems so overkill for how small a space it is. And it's gonna be so minimal because we're also gonna have a bit of plywood there and blocking that window there, that then feeds up into the overhead cabinets. Yeah, we'll fix that as well. So it ends up being like a tiny strip along there, this middle bit here, and a tiny strip along there, and that's all the yellow we're going to see on that side. And then on this side, there'll be a little bit more shown, so there'll be like this whole bit, there'll be the whole way up until the galvanized section there, and I guess, what am I doing? Essentially, we'll probably end up painting all the way down to the bottom part, but it is going to be basically covered with cushions that are going to be the backrest for this seat here, because the bench itself is going to go up to decent height, sort of like there, and then obviously you've got a cushion on top of that, and then you've got a backrest as well. So the whole point is that we want to make, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's going to be more about comfort more than anything, but we sort of want the top of the cushions along this side to be similar height to the countertop on that side. So because of that, we're working with such a small amount of like yellow details, and for me to then actually think about, okay, cool, I'm going to have to get long continuous sheets of nice ply, cut out the windows. I'm going to have that off the wall according to where all like the different fittings are, and then I'm going to need to do a frame for the window. Don't get me wrong, it would look great, but the amount of extra fiddling about, also potential for other stuff to go bad just to cover up a couple little bits, when essentially all I really need to do, like, I don't mind that the metal finish, it doesn't bother me whatsoever, and it's still kind of nice that, like, sort of a little reminder you are still in like an old Land Rover, but obviously that yellow is going to jump out a lot, so we're going to have to paint it. I've got a paint color matching the ceiling that we're then going to also paint this with, and then a 2-pack clear coat as well. So I want it to be a full sort of auto body finish, what you would do for the outside of a car as well. So hopefully it turns out that way. I mean, I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Depending on how we go, we may have a bit left over for the ceiling as well. There's various scuff marks. I mean, particularly these corners are disgusting. I'm gonna have to do something with them. That's just weird adhesive that's like cement. So that threw a spanner in the works, but that'll be for future Glenn to worry about. scuffed and then really thoroughly cleaned multiple times with degreaser and wax remover. So that should be really nicely prepped. That'll dry really thoroughly while we're actually masking everything up, because we're gonna have to mask up so much stuff. So we went and got some newspapers, cover everything up, and then we're ready to paint. As with everything paint related, it's all about prep. Painting's just the last piece of the puzzle. So fingers crossed I don't mess this up.
Workshop you go. No pressure.
Coat one done. We've gone like a bit of a lighter coat, and then hopefully it'll just sort of start to lay smoother and smoother. Then I believe the thing that makes it that much better is the clear coat in the end. So probably get 2 more coats either side, and hopefully that works out. Done. Couldn't film anything because it'll just have heaps of overspray and all that jazz on either camera or phone. I think it's come up pretty well. Like the very, very corners and edges, I think probably might be like a tiny bit thin, but they're going to be blocked in and covered anyway, so I wasn't as worried, as long as like the main areas that will be seen will be nice and heavily coated, a solid colour, and then a really nice clear coat on top. I used every little bit of paint that I had actually, which was pretty perfect to be honest. Looks pretty good.
It looks so good.
It's actually a pretty clean job. I probably could have used maybe 1 more coat of the white, I think, if you look closely, but it's more in like a couple of little spots that are going to be covered anyway. So as a whole, like the biggest ones are more like the protruding bar, and particularly these areas here. But yeah, I'm really stoked.
Yeah.
That was pretty successful.
That's so cool. Now I want to do the ceiling.
Yeah, that's prep. We do want to do the ceiling. We need to order a fair bit more white paint, but
yeah, that's a later thing.
yeah, but wow, I'm stoked.
Yeah.
This looks great.
Wow. It's coming together.
Yeah.
Kind of. We still have so much more to do. What's next?
Sound ending.
Yes.
Back to where we were yesterday, but this time we actually get to stick it down.
Yay.
It's exciting. Man, that was so quick. Obviously we're not done, but
Oh yeah, the big portion.
that was so good. And it does help that we don't have a million ridges or anything weird in our flooring, but
Yeah, and like Vance's would have like so many grooves.
yeah, it'd be, well, it's still easy, but this is so straightforward. That was perfect. Just trim the edges and we get going on these footwells.
Your hands have seen better days.
Yeah, so many little cuts on things. Oh, well.
Cute rings.
Nice. So I just realised I still need to, obviously I still need to cover this in.
What do you mean?
But
It's the fun.
I was just getting carried away with actually fitting this. So We still need to get another sheet of aluminium and rivet it in. This is where the spare tyre did go, but then I think we already talked about the fact that the water tanks are going to go in here. So we're going to need to get one of those and rivet that in. I'm fine with leaving this here. I'm not going to get carried away with it though, because it is annoying. But the cool thing about this stuff as well is you can, even once you've rolled it in, you can peel it back up without having an issue with like leaving a bunch of crap behind or anything like that, and then you can roll it back down again. So it is nice if you do sort of need to move it or get access to a certain area or whatever, you can still do that. So we're going to do that with this guy when we do this. But until we get that done, I'm just going to do the remainder of this, and then this side's also fine to do as well. Now Nige is packed away. Look at him all tucked in there. Have a massive storm coming over the next couple of days. Like windy and super wet. He is not yet water sealed, which is dandy. And we also just moved him away from any trees because the wind's supposed to be crazy. We have found though in South Australia often it ends up being a little bit like of a worry coming into it, then it's all right. But at the same time, the last time we were here, we ended up like through the middle of the night having to drive to an undercover like shopping centre because of like hail and wind and stuff. This is so wild. So preparing for the worst, hoping for the best, but old Nige will be not getting any water in him. And I've tried to secure the tarp as best I can so it doesn't just sail away. We finished up most of the sound deadening. There's a couple of spots because, as I said, we still have to find that sheet. We'll have to find it. I know where to find it. I just need to get it. Rivet it down so we can sound deaden completely. We just moved him then, and I was surprised. I honestly didn't think there would be that much difference considering it is the back and obviously all the noise comes through the front. But like just so much less rattling and all that random noise. It was very much like any sound I could hear was just from the front and the engine, which I wasn't expecting much considering we didn't even do the roof or ceiling, I should say. So quite impressed, to be honest. It's not even finished yet, and then we've still got to do all the front. So
far, so good.
Yeah, pretty stoked with that. And it took just like a nice little afternoon of just getting it done. It wasn't very hard at all. So yeah, I guess day off tomorrow. Or we'll go buy the extra stuff we've got to get from Bunnings. Yeah. And we'll see you guys on Monday. All right, we've got a break in the weather. I finished off basically all the sound deadening, and in the bottom of those. I just can't do that yet because until we get the water tank, I don't know exactly. It's going to be pretty snug. So I know it's somewhere sort of on this side that the fill-up hole is going to go. So depending on exactly where that goes through, I'm going to have a hole, and then I'm going to want to try and make the pipe line up the best way. So whether that means I put in like a little elbow joint or... Hang on, I'm doing this from so far away. So yeah, whether that means I can continue that line nicely all the way just to it with a little elbow joint, or if I'm going to have to sort of do a couple of elbow joins. This was the original gas fitting, so I pulled all that out. I wanted to keep the surrounding so that it's still, like I don't need to put any hole in the body of it. And then for this part, I've just ended up rigging together two separate pieces from irrigation piping. So it is really strong stuff, and they all thread into each other, and they're made for water, which is sick. So then that way I've already now got a barb fitting that I'll be able to put a food grade pipe onto, which makes it really nice. The big thing though is just trying to avoid excessive sort of like bending of the pipe, because I mean this is a stronger setup than the very, very first one we had in Vance. But one thing that did happen was we sort of had forced the pipe to bend a bit more than it should have. Sure, the pipe can bend, but it ended up over time through heat, vibration and movement, it ended up splitting here. However, that was with a pretty basic plastic sort of water fill-up point, not specifically this strong irrigation type pipe. I'm not too worried about it, but I don't really want to be bending and forcing stuff too much if I don't have to. So once we get that tank, I'll be able to cut the right size hole for the pipe to go through to fill up, and then I'll be able to cover up the whole thing and then sound deaden it. But other than that, the sound deadening's done for the back. As a whole, I'm super impressed with it. Really, really stoked. Also, it's funny noticing the acoustics in here now with the floor the way it is. It's a little less tinny, which of course would happen if we had our build in here. I mean, often when you're dealing with an empty shell, it ends up being far more obvious. But if it means that is making a big difference on top of everything else, it's going to be a winner, surely. So now I guess I'm just going to be tinkering away, making the most of when it's not raining, back and forth. And then when we can, I'll take you for a drive. We'll be able to see exactly sort of what the sound's like just from this part. Obviously, the biggest difference will probably be once we end up going into the front. But I was interested before any of this, sort of how much, like quantifiably, how much of a difference each portion makes. If you were to pick the most bang for your buck, or if you just wanted to know, like me, how far it ends up going and what a difference each one makes, this at least sort of divides it as best it can. So I'm very intrigued to see it now empty again and with the sound deadening done, minus that tiny little square, which shouldn't make too much of a difference. So I'll take you for a drive when we get a chance. That was actually a fair big difference. I remember a lot of the stuff that I have seen in researching all the sound deadening and bits and pieces like that was obviously using like an app or a rig for sort of measuring decibels. But I remember thinking like a fair few of the figures weren't that different. However, the person noticed how much of a difference there was being in it. So I didn't think there was much point decibel wise measuring, because a lot of it's more that if it's like a smooth, constant, different frequency and also constant sound, it's that perception of it being nice and like leveled and you're not hearing all extra little bits and pieces. I'm sure you heard in the before and afters, like there's such a difference. So I think volume wise, you'll notice it's not like dramatic. It's not like there's a massive drop in sound. Obviously you're still hearing the engine, you're still hearing like the dash rattles and stuff, but there's so much less like extra that's happening above that sound as well. I think it's a pretty massive difference considering nothing has been done in the front. Also, it's good to know that with a lot of sound deadening, you don't need to do the coverage that we did. The main thing being that we wanted it to be that constant vapor barrier, but also is completely level to put our subfloor on, and also because it is doing that sort of insulation as well. So it definitely doesn't need to be, and the car builders guys also say that it doesn't have to be. It's just more for the multiple uses that we want to do. That's the best way to go about it. You'll notice often a lot of people will just put a square on like the middle of the panel, where you can imagine like a drum skin basically right in the middle. It stops that reverberation. So you don't need to go as overboard as we did, but the multiple uses we're using it for and how we went about it was definitely why we covered the entire thing. But yeah, actually super impressed. I'm really keen to see what doing the doors, the footwells and under the seats in the front is going to do for the overall effect of it. And we'll also do the roof in the cab, just not in the back part, which is going to be, I'm very intrigued to see that, because already there's just a lot less extra fuzz and buzz and rattles going on, which is really cool. So that'll leave us here for this week. Next week, now that we've got the sound deadening done, it's great, well, at least in the back anyway, we can now start looking at putting the subfloor in, finalising the cabinetry cuts, getting some more templates cut up, and actually sort of start piecing together roughly and mocking up the little modules that we're going to have for the build, which is so exciting. And it's not going to be raining anymore. Hooray!